One of the things that I was always proud of was that it was the most beautiful church. It was, I was told it was Italian, and the brick was so beautiful. You would sit there and look at all the designs that the brick would make. And the altar was so pretty. And then they told us that they were going to be painting the ceiling, and I thought nothing of it until I walked in there. And here was this horrid-looking, pinkish-looking paint on the ceiling. And I thought, oh, it looks so tawdry, it looks so awful. They're going to spoil the looks of my church. And then they put up the paintings. And I was so proud of it, and it was so beautiful. And it was so different from what I thought it was going to be. It was Father Cassidy and Father Packard put on quite a few musicals and kept the kids really interested in having fun. And they go up there for all those rehearsals, and they had a wonderful time. And they put on South Pacific. My one son was in that. They put on what's the one with the hills are alive. And my niece, Jerry Cashman, was in that and had one of the leading roles, and I was so proud of her. And another one they put on, there was a third one, Oklahoma. Oh yes, they did Oklahoma. And it was a wonderful way to keep the kids busy at church, and they were really good friends with those kids, and they taught them a lot. They had them coming up and getting on the stage where they'd never been on the stage before. My one nephew was in Oklahoma, and he had one of the lead parts, and he was stage struck from then on. He's not alive now, it's Craig Cashman, but every chance he got to go to any musical, he was in the front row from then on. And this is a great thing they did. And it's fun. And you have that sort of special relationship with the ones that were with you in the play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was something else, you know, when the Pope decided that we could not eat meat on Fridays, I said, Father Quinn, are you gonna eat meat on Friday? And he said, hey, if it's good enough for the Pope, it's good enough for me. And boy, I went right out and bought some hot dogs. I mean, could you not eat meat on Fridays, but you had, for every season, you had Ember Days, so that you couldn't eat on Wednesday and Saturday that week. Okay, Ember Days were, say we're going to come into fall, and so that week, we couldn't eat meat on Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. It saved me a lot of food money. It really did. But it was kind of a pain in the neck. And we ate 4 times a year. But it was just starting though, and that was the first thing they dropped. They didn't drop Good Friday. They didn't drop Fridays, but they did drop that, and that was a kind of a relief, because it was hard to explain to anybody because I never knew myself. Oh, Father Phelan was one of the earlier priests, and when he said Mass, you had standing room only. And the reason was because we called him Father Go Fast Phelan. He always said Mass in 30 minutes or 35 minutes, not an hour. And he was popular. And he also was a really fun person. Well, we had priests over for dinner ever so often because I was so active, and so was my husband, and our kids got so used to seeing priests over there that, in fact, one time when Father Moynihan was up in giving a sermon, and my son was 4, one of my sons, who shall be nameless, was sitting with me in the front pew, and Father stopped to take a breath, and my son was standing there looking up at this friend he sees all the time at the house, and he yelled, "That's enough!" And Monsignor looked down and he said, "I've heard the voice, I'm through." And he turned around and went off. So I was a great one for redoing my house, And I did my own papering and painting, and I just papered my dining room. It was really pretty. So he had 3 priests over for Sunday dinner, and Father Tui and Father Quinn on one side of the table, and Father Majerus and my husband and myself at the table. And they were kidding back and forth, and pretty soon it got to be pretty fast and furious, and we were just at dessert, and Father Majerus took his fork up and took a piece of pumpkin pie and flipped the pie at Father Tui, but Tui ducked, and that pumpkin went all over my brand new wallpaper. And I said, how do you make yourself not grit your teeth and pretend to smile? It was pretty hard. Father O'Sullivan came, and he gathered a bunch of us together. Some of us that he had been giving instructions to, because that's when Ken joined the church. We met over at Ralph White's house on Pleasant Avenue and 36th. And there were quite a few of us there, and he told us about his idea of having Cana couples. And of course we all were very enthusiastic, and he said, well, now we have to think of a name for it. And Bud Elfelt said, why don't we just call it Cana Couples? And so we did. And we started Cana Couples, and it was an immense success. And Father O'Sullivan was a wonderful person for keeping us going and giving us ideas. And we had some wonderful speakers come, and it was really great. Right. Also, when I was at Incarnation, we had May processions in May, of course, honoring the Blessed Virgin. And up past the altar railing, they would have the statue of Mary with a ladder behind it. And we would elect one girl in our class. And this was the one time when the girls were featured. We all carried a rose as we marched up the aisle. And the girl who was to crown the queen usually had a veil on her head. And at my time, it was Catherine Hanna. And she was behind, and when we started singing, "Oh, Hail to the Beautiful Queen," we'd raise our hands up with the roses. And she climbed up the ladder behind and crowned the crown of roses on the statue. And that was really big. That was wonderful. I was in 8th grade. Well, you know, I felt badly because all my life I'd been in Incarnation. And now I'm moving, and I had to move because my husband lost his sight, and most of it, and he would be out mowing the grass. And then this one day I was on the porch, and a couple of men went by, and one of them said, "Boy, I wonder who was drunk when they mowed that grass." And I thought, if my husband hears that, he's going to feel badly, and I think we better move from here. Our kids were gone, and we didn't need that big house. So we moved to 59th and Pillsbury. And in moving, I had to give up my whole life of being at Incarnation, and I didn't want him to know I was feeling badly. But I said to my sister, I feel badly. I worked so hard for Incarnation, and nobody even cares that I'm moving. And I shouldn't have said anything to her, because I'll bet she told that to Father Monahan. And the next thing I knew, at the apartment, I received a dozen roses from Father Monahan. And I loved him like everything. Everybody in the parish has to work at Oktoberfest. You don't get out of that. I think I worked so many Oktoberfests that I don't remember. Well, I just mostly working in the kitchen. And my dad, worked in Oktoberfest, and they had, it was like a bazaar, and I can remember standing there and watching my dad roll that wheel, and then somebody would win something. And one time, I who never win anything, I won the only time I ever did win, I won a turkey, and I thought that was the most wonderful thing in the world. And I didn't want my mother to cook it, but she did.